Kids ready?
Yes.
Okay. I call to order this meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District Number 48 Governing Board. Today is Tuesday, October 18th. It is 6:01 p.m. At this time, I'm going to ask Vice President Dr. Hartwell to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice President Dr. Hartwells. We'll start with a roll call vote from my far right, please.
Zach Lindsay.
Patty Beckman.
Libby Hartwells.
And I'm Julie Sinowski. We do have a quorum this evening. And I would ask for a motion to approve our agenda for this evening.
President Sinowski, I'd like to, if I could, pull out of the consent the item, so this is consent agenda 8, item 8, and where is it? I.
8I. There's been a request to pull the consent agenda item 8I, approval of the 22-23 substitute pay increase. Any other alterations? All right. Call for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0 to approve the agenda as amended. At this time, I'd like to review our meeting decorum. Citizens attending and/or participating in our Scottsdale Unified School District meetings, either in person, virtually, or telephonically, are required to observe the same rules of order and decorum applicable to members of the governing board and staff. Unauthorized remarks or demonstrations from members of the audience, yells, outbursts, and/or other disruptions are not permitted. Members of the public are not allowed to approach the dais at any time while the governing board meeting is in session without express permission from the governing board president. And we will move on to agenda item 3, student and staff recognitions and celebrations. Dr. Menzel.
Well, good evening, President Sinowski, Vice President Hartwells, and members of the governing board. We have 2 formal celebrations to share with you this evening, along with a few other items to celebrate. But first, I would like to invite Dr. Melissa Sackos, our Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, to present the first recognition.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel, and good evening, President Sinowski, Vice President Hartwells, Governing Board members, and Ms. Wagner. I'm going to tell you about an accolade that a Cornell High School senior has earned. Daniel Castaneda is unable to join us tonight because of an after-school employment opportunity. Accepting on his behalf, Ms. Palatucci, principal of Cornell High School. So, Ms. Palatucci, please join me at the podium. Honoring Americans Veterans, the local organization that sponsors the annual Phoenix Veterans Day Parade, offers an essay competition each year to Arizona high school students to recognize a local veteran and tie in each year's parade meeting, which this year is Liberty, Honor, and Sacrifice. Daniel, who's a member of JAG, Jobs for Arizona Graduates program, wrote about his brother-in-law, who served as a U.S. Marine for 8 years and now helps protect the nation as a member of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency. Daniel entered the writing competition as part of the Scottsdale Community College English 1 dual enrollment course he takes from Dr. Joanne Marquette. Daniel's 400-word essay has won first place in the 12th grade competition.
Hey.
Clap, who's smarter?
Yeah.
And for that, he will receive $250, an opportunity to ride in the Hall of Fame
Yay, Danielle.
Dr. Sakos, can I request a copy of the essay sent to the board? I would love to see it. Absolutely. Thank you.
Are we good? Okay. Well, tonight I have the privilege of recognizing the payroll department for their dedication and hard work to ensure that all district employees are paid timely and accurately. Like so many other departments within this district, the payroll department for several months now has been a department of 3, where they're typically a department of 5. They're short 2 people, so if anybody wants a job in payroll, we're looking. Because of that, throughout the entire summer, so starting back in June, going through August, the payroll department staff worked 6 to 7 days a week, every single week, trying to get payroll done, getting the old year closed out, setting up for the new year, and getting people set. They did run into some bumps along the way as we got into that first payroll for our teaching staff. However, as paperwork was coming in, payroll was running payrolls every single day so that they could make sure that people got paid as soon as we got the paperwork that was necessary to get that taken care of. Additionally, with the increased salaries that we did for everybody, payroll within a week's time took all new salary schedules, uploaded those into the system, recalculated over 1,100 employee pay, set up new pay for everybody, and then ran a regular payroll, and then ran another payroll to get everybody caught up with the retro pay, and did it in record amount of time. Which, by the way, was interesting because our payroll director actually retired and went on to ESI in August. So she got to do all the work, but doesn't receive the benefit of the ESI because she's on ESI. Additionally, when they get done with that, they'll be starting up this week. They're doing the COVID retention payment stipends to everybody. So along with the regular payrolls, we've given them new salary schedules. We've given them a COVID retention payment. In November, when we get the grades from the state, we will be working on the payout for the 301 performance pay. And once that all gets wrapped up, it'll be about time to do W-2s. So we thought it would be appropriate to just recognize payroll department for the fact that they've gotten what they've gotten things done that they've done, gotten people paid as efficiently and timely as possible, and done it with a short staff. And all the while doing it with smiles and being customer friendly as possible and just taking care of our employees, which is an important part for us. So we wanted to recognize payroll for their contributions and what they do to take care of our staff and make sure that we have the pay that we would all like to be here. So we have with us Lindy, who is the director of payroll. The other 2 staff members, Rebecca and Diane, weren't able to be here tonight, but they were not. They were surprised. They're not used to standing in front of people and getting thank you for pay. So it was kind of a fun little surprise for them. Thank you, Lindy.
Thank you, Lindy and Diane and Rebecca. And also congratulations to Daniel for his recognition. There are a few other things to note in our celebrations. Our 21st century Title I schools, Hohokam, Navajo, Pima, Tivon, and Yavapai elementary schools, and Ingleside and Tonalea middle schools will each receive $30,000 enhancement grants for their before, after, and summer school programs. This is on top of their regular 21st century funding. The grants will help provide additional teachers and additional supplies and materials for the academic and summer programs, an additional week of summer school at Pima, and funds to create family engagement videos, podcasts, and take and make materials to extend student learning when they're not at school. All of the funding will be used to continue to support high-quality programs in our 7 21st century learning schools to enhance enrichment, intervention, and innovative learning. We learned recently that Echo Canyon English language development teacher Kaya Smart is a finalist for the Arizona Department of Education English language development teacher of the year. So we wanted to wish her well, best of luck, and we look forward to the final announcement next month. We also told you last month that we had 9 2023 National Merit Scholarship semifinalists. However, with the raising of a question by a Desert Mountain student, the support of District Assessment Coordinator Gail Oper, and a second look by the Scholarship Foundation itself, 4 more semifinalists have been identified in the Desert Mountain class of 2023. So Nanan Aravozi, Christopher Lessler, Ethan Rojas, and Xia Shun Song are the additional 4 semifinalists that were not previously identified. And a final note, Saguaro High School junior, who will be graduating a year early in May, Vivek Krishnan, has been named a semifinalist as well. So congratulations to our 14 semifinalists, and we look forward to the next stage in this prestigious scholarship competition. Another thing that I wanted to celebrate is earlier this week, Scottsdale Unified had 2 finalists in the 2022 Valley Metro Clean Air Awards competition. This is the 35th year that Valley Metro has held these awards, and one was for the district's overall trip reduction program to encourage ride sharing, and the other was for Hohokam Elementary's trip reduction bulletin board display, which was nominated for a People's Choice Award. While we were not selected as winners, it's important to congratulate our transportation department, and specifically Valerie Pleasant, who oversees the district program, and Hohokam's Tracy Eggert, who designed the staff lounge bulletin board, for their efforts. I couldn't have been more proud as we sat in the room to see Scottsdale Unified as the only district public school that was in the finalist categories for any award nomination. And I was also pleased to see that Scottsdale High alum Dan Harkins also received an award, and he shared his own personal story about being a high school student that started an environmental club back when he was at Scottsdale High. So it was a very proud moment for us, even though we weren't declared the winner in those 2 categories.
Is that it? All right, thank you, Dr. Menzel, and congratulations to our the people we recognize this evening for their accomplishments, our payroll staff. We can't function without you, so thank you. And I know a lot of you do a lot of work to support them, so that's great. Right now, we're going to move on to our governing board reports. Governing board colleagues, do any of you have reports to share out at this time? Vice President Dr. Hartwells?
That won't go off, sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, President Sanowski. Well, technical difficulty, sorry. First, welcome back from fall break, and welcome to National Chemistry Week, which you didn't know that, did you? All right, what is National Chemistry Week? Chemistry Week is a week that is dedicated to reminding us all to explore the chemical alphabet that makes up our universe, whether exploring the difference between a tooth and a bone, even though they're made of predominantly large same elements, why an ice cube in your drink is the same water that was probably hanging out in a cloud over your house, or before that, rolling around over the scales of a fish in the ocean. In other words, just explore for curiosity's sake this week. So that's your challenge, that's your homework. And to that end, last week during fall break, my student and I, and our dog, spent some time in the great outdoors, in nature, appreciating the beauty and bounty of the land that we live on, but often take for granted. You know, and I reflected on the significance of the day that we arrived actually in Sedona. It was October 10th, and it was the Indigenous Peoples Day, formerly known as Columbus Day. And that day is to honor the sacrifices that many generations have made for our country, Native American peoples and Indigenous peoples have made for our country, and to celebrate the deep respect that those peoples have shown to Mother Earth. And so in honor of our district's strengthening relationship with our neighbors, friends, and community members in the Salt River Pima, Maricopa Indian community, and the Yavapai community, I thought it was timely to reshare with our community a select passage out of the district's land acknowledgement. So just as a reminder, like Scottsdale Community College, SUSD resides in part on land originally inhabited by the Indigenous peoples of the area. And since April of 2021, the district and this board acknowledged that fact with a land acknowledgement, which can be found in its entirety on the SUSD district webpage under About Our District in the appropriately nested section History. So in part, the land acknowledgement reads, "It is vitally important to acknowledge that the land we live and work on is the home of the Native people who have inhabited this landscape for millennia and continues to be spiritually connected to the O'odham of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community who live here today. The landscape is sacred, and it reflects cultural values that are central to our way of life and to the way that we define ourselves. The oral history and the song culture of the people are specifically tied to tangible places, like the mountains that surround our valleys are associated with specific historic, cultural, and religious values. These places are tangible reminders about our shared attitudes, goals, and practices that characterize who we are, where we belong, and how we relate to each other in the past, continuing today and into the future. And I thought that actually tied nicely with National Chemistry Week. Also, since we've last met, Mayor Ortega, as you may have known, invited applications for the Constitution Day contest for K through 12 students of the city of Scottsdale. And I had the honor of joining several members of the Scottsdale branch of the American Association of University Women, an organization dedicated to the advancing equity for women and girls through advocacy, education, philanthropy, and research, to judge the essay submissions. President Sanowski is a member of that organization. You may remember the same community of members that have donated hundreds of books to both Pima Elementary and I believe last year was Navajo Elementary School, beneficiaries of a good, solid organization in our community, and we are grateful to them. So I want to issue a big thank you to all the students across the city, and particular emphasis on the SUSD student applicants for their thoughtful review and views on the important impact of our U.S. constitutional amendments that they have had and continue to have, ensuring a democratic society, one in which the people must consent to be governed and be governed within the rules set out in those 27 amendments. So every submission will have made clear, our young people are very proud to live in the United States and in a society based on the rule of law. So as we head into election in a few weeks, I thought I would leave you with a few words of one of our middle school students, who I won't name. However, if you're a Desert Canyon 8th grader, you might know this person, who in one sentence transcended the visceral fray and offered what I felt like was a gentle reminder of why we must participate in our democracy to keep it. Quote, "Adding this amendment to the Constitution changed it for the better, bringing it one step closer to what it should be, a country for and by all the people." A very astute statement for an 8th grader. So thank you, President Sanowski, that's all.
Thank you, Vice President Dr. Hartwells. And gave us a lot to think about. Thanks. A lot of this ties in, doesn't it? Thanks. We'll move on to Board Member Beckman's report.
Just a quick congratulations to the Coronado Dons on a very successful coffee house production. The first week of October, I heard it was fantastic. Chaparral has Dracula coming up October 27th and 28th. I think that's timely for Halloween. So all of you fine arts loving people should go out and check that out. And then finally, Saguaro has their coffee house this week. I intend on going, and they have a production of Beauty and Beast happening the first week of November. So I hope to see all of you out there. It's a great way to participate in the success of our students and support their talent.
Thank you, Board Member Beckman. I always look forward to being able to see the many talents that our students have and how they display them, how they choose to display them, not just in our classrooms, but also outside of our classroom, and which leads to my board report. I had the opportunity to attend the JAG, Jobs for Arizona Graduates, so their recognition ceremony since our last meeting. And this was the first time I really had any type of presentation on JAG. I'd heard about it, but I didn't really know what it was and who was involved with it. So I will say I am so amazed with the students, the caliber of professionalism that they demonstrated throughout this presentation and ceremony, which they ran and facilitated it themselves. They have a great teacher sponsor, and of course their administration backs them 100%. So the commitment from students, staff, and family support that are really necessary for every student's success, but it was very evident at this recognition event. I was deeply impressed with the student leadership. Their public speaking skills were amazing. They displayed these throughout the evening recognition event. They weren't hesitant at all about speaking in front of a large audience. They were like, they didn't miss a beat. So it was wonderful to see that. And I look forward to watching these students succeed further in their JAG year ahead. Since our last report, I have met, like several of my board colleagues, with other community members independently to discuss their concerns and interests in supporting our Scottsdale schools. I do believe in this day and age, with social media becoming the easy go-to form of communication, that we actually take the time to meet with one another face-to-face. I find that the meeting of someone who has a different perspective going in is very different than the departure of such a meeting. So I always welcome to meet with members in our community and really enjoy that opportunity to hear their concerns and their ideas on how we can improve as a school district and a community. I had the opportunity to attend the Partners for Paiute community outreach event. I was not aware, and I've lived in Scottsdale for, 35 years, and I was not aware that this organization existed. So another one of our strong community support systems put in place in our community, which just leads me to believe, especially after what Dr. Hart-Wells was saying about who's next, the youth, it gives me great optimism. And then on another note, I wanted to thank Dennis Rayler for taking the time to review the annual energy update for this past school year, leading me to better understand the measures that we have taken as a district to be more conscientious about our environment and the impact that we have on it, and that we can have a better future for those that are students now for their lives. I think it's really important for us to be able to share what we're doing and tell our story. We keep talking about that, telling our story better, ways to improve our fiscal and environmental efficiencies. Thank you, Dennis, for that lengthy report. And granted, there's a lot of work we can still do to be better in this area, but the amount of work that's been done already by our school district is amazing. So thanks, Kate. And welcome back from fall break. I sure hope you all had a good time. I was able to get up to Salem, Massachusetts for some good Halloween fun, and then also to Vermont to see some beautiful color leaves. So I'm ready to go. And I also want to make note of the many gifts that our district have received and so graciously recognize Anasazi, Cherokee, Cochise, Hopi, Laguna, Mountainside, APT, and PTOs. Reckless Abandon Strength and Performance, Scottsdale Foundation Charities, Coronado Foundation for the Future, HF Quinsler, Lirna Schoon, and the Saguaro Student Government. Again, these partnerships in our community, our district could not exist. We wouldn't have existed well without them. So thank you to everyone, all the parents and students that take part in really seeking out and raising funds for our students. Lastly, we do have teacher-parent conferences approaching, and I cannot reiterate enough the importance of a healthy partnership between students, teachers, and our families. Our employees work hard to create safe and effective and academically rigorous learning experiences for all of our SUSD students. Students are more successful with the honest communication and commitment shared by all. And that wraps up my report. And we will move on now to public comment. I'd like to refresh the memory of maybe the viewing public that action taken as a result of any type of public comment is limited according to state statute 38-431.01G, responding to any criticism made by those who have addressed the governing board directing staff to look into the matter, or asking that the matter be put on a future agenda item. No other discussion or legal action is allowed. I know sometimes in the community, people will say, the governing board doesn't respond to what I said at the board meeting. Well, we can't. So we do, if the general public can see that we often do follow up in our meeting later on and ask that our superintendent and staff address issues that are brought up by the general public. So it's not that we're ignoring you. We are restricted by law, and that's why we don't often respond, although I know a lot of us would like to write then and there. And I would like to note that public comments will be conducted in accordance with Board Policy BEDH, and we have one person who has requested the opportunity to speak tonight, and that is Keith Zolman. You'll have 2 minutes.
Just me?
Just you?
Well, I hope my 2 minutes doesn't take up too much time. Everybody that's here. I remember when it was 3 minutes. Well, that was nice. Is that the camera that's on me for YouTube? Probably. Does anybody know? Does this not get posted to YouTube anymore?
The meeting is, but there's not a video on YouTube.
I can't believe it. Gee. All right. Well, thanks for letting me know. Okay. Mine's kind of two-pronged today. Just a quick update of what the CGP developments are going on at Hopi. So thank you all. Sarah Torlin sent out an email recently to conduct a CGP forum with the Hopi parents coming up on Monday, I think. So I appreciate that. Dr. Benson will be there too. Thank you. Sarah's not here, but that's all right. But I wanted to mention that unfortunately the notice did include the phrase that the intent of this meeting is not to provide a platform to reinstate the CGP program at Hopi. And so I just wanted to communicate that this thing is happening. That's a good development, but I'm a little bit disappointed. I was hoping for a little bit different phrasing, something a little bit more open-minded, creative problem solving, which would be, what we would kind of expect from CGP programs. We need CGP at Hopi. It's there for the benefit of the kids and for the whole entire school. And that actually leads me to my other point of being here, which is a teacher celebration. The very first teacher that my family had was Lisa Dominy at Hopi Elementary. And it was not long after the beginning of the school year. She, actually probably right around this time when we had parent-teacher conferences, that she had said, I think you should go get your daughter tested. Because as you know, gifted students are often very intelligent, but also have lots of social and emotional needs. It's often asynchronous development, and the gifted program, the CGP, is something that answers those needs very specifically. It is acutely tailored to those types of learners. It is very valuable to them. And so I feel it's very important that I come up here publicly and say thank you to Lisa Dominy for her incredible career of service and dedication, not just for my family, but for all of the other kids that she has had under her wing at Hopi. Without her and her involvement and her care, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't care about this as much as I do, and feel so strongly that, know even that CGP is a critical component to the success of not just my kids, but all of the kids at Hopi that need this amenity. So, so sincerely, I wish there was a camera, but oh well. But to Lisa Dominy, thank you very much. So at least it's recorded and out there. Thank you, guys.
All right. At the conclusion of our public comment section of our governing board meeting, we will move on to the superintendent comments. Dr. Menzel.
Thank you, President Sanowski, Vice President Hartwells, and members of the governing board. As a reminder, October is Bullying Prevention Awareness Month, and this afternoon I had an opportunity to attend a No Place for Hate event at Ingleside Middle School. I want to thank Dr. Hartwells for joining us, and Dr. Benson at the invitation of Assistant Principal Patricia Mastropolo, who has spearheaded the effort on the campus of Ingleside. This month's theme is kindness, and as part of the celebration, Richard Maxwell students from CMAS provided entertainment in the outside courtyard during lunch for the students. When you're on the campus, you have a true sense and feel for what it means to create an environment where there is no place for hate. And so I just want to give a shout out to all those who have participated and made that possible on the campus of Ingleside. Secondly, I'd like to remind families that the high school sophomore class, students will be taking the PSAT test a week from today. The test gives sophomores a first taste of what a college entrance exam looks like and is provided annually by the district. Juniors wanting to qualify for the National Merit Scholarship Program pay to take the test, which will also be administered next Tuesday. The testing will mean a late start to the school day at all 5 high schools and 2 bus runs, one at the regular time and a second later in the morning. So please consult your school's website for your student's specific schedule on Tuesday, October 25th. Tomorrow morning, I will be joining Dr. Eric Lashinsky, who is the president of Scottsdale Community College, to present a State of Education in Scottsdale presentation sponsored by the Scottsdale Chamber of Commerce. The event will be hosted at Sky Song, and we look forward to connecting with community business leaders and others to share our story, talk about academic achievement, and what's on the horizon for Scottsdale Unified School District. I do believe a couple of board members have. And then on Thursday evening, we invite people to join the Scottsdale Unified School District Foundation's annual Fun and Games Night, benefiting our Scottsdale students. It is not too late. You can go online to buy your ticket now. Remember, the foundation does so much to support innovation and teaching and learning and our Crisis K-9 program here in the district. We look forward to a fun night and raising money to support Scottsdale students. Finally, when it comes to telling our story, as President Stanowski reminded us, that's really important. We're excited for the 2022 fall edition of the SUSD Showcase magazine. It is live now on the website and highlights many of our alumni of distinction. As you know, we have many learners who have come through our schools and have gone on to lead and innovate in our community. Many have also returned to lead in our classrooms and at our sites. We are grateful for their continued commitment to Scottsdale students and SUSD's legacy of success. You can find the magazine at www.susd.org/showcase, and we hope you will take time to read it and take pride in all that we do to provide our students with world-class, future-focused learning. We will have a limited number of hard copies printed, and I'll share this with the governing board. The cost of printing is pretty expensive, and so we'll distribute these in places where they can sit on coffee tables and be read. Very proud of our communications team for all the work that they did to put this together. It's very well done. With that, I'll conclude my comments this evening.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to seeing those showcases showcased throughout our community. I'll take a look at this, Doctor. Okay, at this time, we are going to move on to agenda item 7, information and discussion items. We will have a presentation by Shannon Crozier on our M&O override, district additional assistance override, and bond fiscal year 2022 report.
Okay, I have to lower this. I can't see anybody. All right. Good evening, Board President Stanowski, Vice President Dr. Hartwells, members of the board, Dr. Menzon Guest. Tonight we take a look at the M&O override, district additional assistance override, and bond expenditures and budgets. This is actually a state statute requirement that we do if you have a bond or override, that you must report back to the community the budget of how the expenditures of what was spent, as well as the budget for the current upcoming year. So we'll start with the maintenance and operations override. That was actually approved by voters in 2019. We're in the 2023 school year. For 24-25, it doesn't actually expire, but at that point, if it's not renewed, we would begin to go into our phase out of 1/3 per year. So we have options of doing either an early option for that of November of 23, which is ironically only a year away, or we could push that off until November of 24, in which case it would need to pass, or we would start our budget reductions within the 25-26 school year. Which seems like we just did this one. So with that, the maintenance and operations override, the ballot approved maintaining current classroom ratios, all-day kindergarten, music, art, world language, athletics, and extracurricular activities, Technology, which we did additional teachers into that area. Staff professional development, so they added 5 days onto the certified teacher salary schedule or calendar for professional development, as well as department chairs, and then provide competitive teacher pay. So when we look at the 21-22 school year, our budget and what we spent was $19,645,355. The bulk of that being in maintaining class size ratios. And then the second biggest part of that being the world languages, music, art, athletics, those areas. All-day kindergarten, the state only provides for half-day kindergarten. We offer all-day K for our kindergarten students, so that as the second half or half of every K teacher is paid through that override. So the second column looks at what our budget for those areas are for this year. Again, looking at keeping the classroom ratios, we base that off of if we lowered those ratios, how many teachers would that be based off an average teacher salary? Again, the all-day kindergarten, the extracurricular activities, athletics, fine arts, world languages, and then again, staff development and teacher pay. For the district additional assistance override, that one was approved in 2016. Currently, we're in the 2023 year. Expires in 23-24. Unlike the M&O override, this one doesn't have a phase-out option. It continues to be funded at 100% until it ends 7 years later. The board opted to do the early ballot, so that goes in November of 22. If that should not pass, then we could go back in November of 23. If it didn't go back onto the ballot in 23 or it didn't pass the second time, then that would be a full 100% reduction of $8.5 million to our capital override. This looks at the pamphlet information as to where those areas were budgeted at. Again, this override was capped at $8.5 million. So curriculum materials and school technology, $6.3 million. We actually spent $5.2, and we have a budget for this year of $8.5. One of the things you'll see as we go through this is our budget is $8.5 million. That's what we receive from the state. We won't spend all of that every single year. There are things that come up, like we know within playgrounds, Greg has to, $350,000 for a playground isn't going to get you very far, and so they have to build those things up and then use it the following year. So the reason you see $11.5 million for the budget for this year is because we didn't spend the whole amount last year and or previous years, and so it builds up that budget. So within curriculum and technology, like I said, the $6.3 million. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment, we keep that fairly low, $800,000. Actual was only $742. One of the things we ran into this year with furniture and equipment is the lead time on getting furniture. We had a lot of things that were ordered in the spring, but didn't come in until the new fiscal year. So that's partly what you see happening there. Fine arts, athletics, and library programs, about $1 million. Playground equipment and safety code compliance. We've really kept that with playground equipment, so small budget, $350,000. Portion of that I know this year went into paying for the Kiva, finishing that playground up as that school wrapped up its new rebuild. So from that, you can see we spent $7.2 million, carried some over, and our budget for this year is $11.5. And then the last one is our bond summary. The bond was also passed in 2016. We have sold all of our bonds, so we're in the last phases of that program. The bond was to provide, renovate, or improve and construct school facilities, including major life cycle projects, school safety site measures, and then purchasing transportation vehicles. So for that $229 million, we have spent most of that money. We have a little bit left for the 23 going into 23, so about $51 million goes into 23 you know what, that says 23-24 budget. We won't spend the full $51 million this year. I didn't put a budget balance in there for the future because I just don't know how much of that's going to end up being spent this year. So we'll still be expending bond budget within the 24-25 school year. We just don't know what that's going to look like until we see what invoices and projects get completed within this school year. So with the bond, we want to show a little bit of what that money has gone for. So the first picture you see is of the Kiva playground. It's a little bit of a faraway shot, but it just shows you that nice structure for the kids to be able to play on, as well as the shade, which is a huge thing for the playgrounds out there. And then the other one being the Redfield playground. I have to say, Greg Scouten, our facilities person, does an amazing job on setting up those playgrounds and what they look like, and providing a good, safe place. Chaparral got a paint job, so this just shows Chaparral with the new painting. And then Desert Mountain tennis courts. There was a lot of other projects that happened throughout the year with this money, the Kiva rebuild being probably the most expensive part for this year spent. But we would have a presentation that took all night if we went through every single thing that happened. So Dennis and his team actually have provided this great website, and hopefully, so on our district website, you can see actually every single expenditure within the bond. So this is again on the district website under bond, and it shows the executive summary, information about it. And there's a lot of information, but this literally tells you every single PO and how much we spent, what it was for, an idea of the project description, budgeted, the contracts award. So even though we couldn't show all of the detail of all of the amazing things that happened through the bond and how we spent that money, this way and board sheet shows just exactly how much we do, along with pictures. Oops, let's see if I can, is it gonna go? Let's see. Here we go. So this is out there for anybody in our community to be able to go back and see all of the wonderful things at each campus and learning community, whether it's painting, football fields, tennis courts, lights, a whole new rebuild or a major remodel on how the bond dollars are spent. So with that, I will leave it open for questions.
Lights are flashing. Board Member Beckman.
Shannon, can you back up to your projected budget allocation for class size? Okay, so the 21-22 actual, you have an increase for your 22-23. Is that increase based on wage increases, or is it what drives that?
So it's the exact same thing. We look at what is the average cost of a teacher in the 22-23 school year.
Okay.
And if we were to reduce, X amount of teachers because of raising class size ratios, that's what drives the budget and the actual
But
on
it's
that.
based on our actuals?
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
our increase, okay. So we're not necessarily with that increase going to see a further reduction in class sizes?
No,
It's just to maintain?
it's just to maintain where we're
Okay.
currently at.
I wanted to make sure.
Yes, yeah, it's just to maintain the class size levels that were in place. Actually, we use the same class size levels that were in place for the 2014 when it was approved, before this 19, before, yeah. So it's just keeping the class sizes as they were several years ago when this was originally put in place.
And then Dennis, you don't have to answer right now, but the other high schools, and you probably have answered this before, are they going to get a paint job at any point coming up? Okay. I think you mentioned that, but I wanted to just double check. Thank you. That's it.
Vice President Dr. Hart Wells.
Thank you, President Sinowski. Thank you, Shannon, for the presentation. It's good to have the photos, as people can, as visual learners out there, to see
Photos make all the
how their
difference.
money, is spent. This is actually a really quick question. This is for Dennis. Is the Smart Sheet available to the public? It is, so we can get into this file, and the Sway link will get us there? Okay, great, perfect. Thank you.
And speaking of that, when our community when they talk about the need for transparency and accountability of their taxpayer funds, this is a perfect example of doing that, showing how every penny is spent, even with the pictures. So when people want to know where their money's going, that's a perfect place to go see where this maintenance and operations override money has been spent. So thank you. I know that was laborious putting that together, and I know Dennis had some good helpers, but excellent, thank you. And then I had a question kind of to tail on to what Board Member Beckman asked about with class sizes. I'd heard years ago what the cost would be to decrease class sizes. What would it be in today's, years ago was like $1 million cost to the district per student count for for class size to be lowered?
For it to go down by one student?
Yeah.
You would be well over $1 million.
In today's.
Yeah, well over $1 million, yeah.
Okay. I would entertain us looking at that very carefully, or at least analyzing where we are right now with overall class sizes per campus and grade level on the campuses, even in secondary level by subject area. I think that often the public schools, people think that we have, huge class sizes, and sometimes that is true, unfortunately, but I know that we have some great courses that do not have large class sizes, and that we know that benefits our students. So another question about the cost that we kick in as a district for the other half of the full-day kindergarten, knowing that the state only pays for a half of that day. What do we pay to supplant that half day the state provides?
2.2 million.
2.2 million?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's, we literally, every kindergarten teacher is split coded, half regular M&O, half district override. And we spent, for last year it was 2.2 million, almost 2.3.
Okay, good to know. Probably higher than this year.
It really depends on, how, the school and the enrollment.
Sure.
So they can fluctuate a little bit there, but
I'm just thinking
Yeah.
staffing costs. And then what amount do we pay for our pre-K services? Because the state doesn't provide that.
the state does not provide that. It kind of depends on the pre-K service. So some pre-K services are paid through Title I. Others are paid through parents making their monthly payment for their child to be enrolled in that program. I don't know the amount off the top of my head of what that is, but the state does not cover pre-K. So it's either through a Title I program or through community education.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. I guess that's it for me. I note that Board Member Beckman has an additional.
Yeah, it's not a question, just a statement. I think I can speak for the whole board here, too. We don't take enough opportunities to thank our taxpayers, and as we're going through this, I think it's an opportune time to say thank you for everything that we have up here, because it was specifically made possible because our taxpayers did pass that override. So that's it.
Thank you, Board Member Beckman. Vice President Dr. Hurt-Wells?
Thank you. That was actually, I have a question as a result of President Sinowski's question regarding class size and how you budgeted this. And I don't want to get into it too deeply because it's not per se override, but when you've budgeted these classroom ratios, competitive teacher pay, this is all based on the current one teacher, one classroom model, right?
So when I look at maintaining current classroom ratios, we look at how many FTE do we have as a district for teachers.
Okay, so you don't really look at the
to break it down by school
operational component of it.
No, we look at how many FTE do we have for teaching, specifically in the classroom, how many students do we have, And it's basically a ratio, because I mean, it's going to vary from school to school. You could have a classroom that is under ratio, you have a classroom who's over the ratio. So we look at it as a district as to what is the teaching FTE, what are the number of students we have, and base it off of that.
So the reason I'm asking is because we have this, I'm under the impression we have this pilot going on in the district, or starting, getting underway with a little bit different, kind of that next gen teaching model. And I'm wondering and hopeful that there will be some cost comparisons, expenditure comparisons, or at least some kind of pro forma of what that might look like compared to how we're doing things now. If there might be what the delta looks like. There
Yeah,
will be, but what is it?
For a pilot program, it's a little bit easier to look at.
Smaller.
Smaller than looking at every single school, every single class, and comparing which, so for this purpose, we look at the whole district-wide, but when it comes to pilots, it's easier to look and see. And we usually will tag a pilot with a special code, so it's able to be pulled out so we can look at the cost.
Okay, good, great, thank you.
Seeing that there are no more questions or comments, thank you, board colleagues, for your great input here. Shannon, thank you very much for the work that you continue to do to help make clear our financial understanding with SUSD. Thanks. And we're going to move on to our consent agenda. I note that we had previously, Dr. Hartwells had pulled I, approval of the 22-23 substitute pay increase. We're going to start with that one. Okay. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to ask to approve the consent agenda as amended. Is there a second? All in favor to approve the consent agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0 to approve as amended. And we have pulled I, the approval of the 22-23 substitute pay increase. Dr. Hartwells, would you like to start off with your questions?
Yes, thank you, President Snowski. And I think Ms. Wilson, if you could, I had some questions, and I actually did send a few questions in advance, and I appreciate you getting that information back to me. But I think it's worth a little bit more of a discussion because, as I noted, this tiered structure for substitutes, it isn't clear to me that it serves the retention purpose that I'm guessing was the original intent. And it seems like an administratively heavy burden to administer different pay rates based on hours. So there's a little bit of overhead lift there that may not need to be the case, one. And then there's just the rate itself. So the comps that we were all provided, the ask is to increase to 124 a day from 120 a day for the daily rate, and then just for the community. And then after so many days of subbing, then your rate would go up incrementally. This is something that the district has done for years, although it's not clear to me why. And then there's the long-term sub and the permanent sub rates, which are a little higher, appropriately so, and different. And those aren't where my question is. So if you could, for the community, describe why this is being brought forward now when we just did pay increases and then prior to that made some adjustments. We did contracts. If you could just explain, I think that would be helpful for one, the context, and then I want to dig into my ask. Okay.
President Sanowski, Vice President Hartwells. The reason that we are presenting this tonight is when we gave the employee raises that the board approved and then provided retroactive pay last month, the substitutes were not included in that increase because we had increased their rates in the last 2 years, 20% increase. Due to some concerns that we heard from substitute teachers, we brought this back and we're providing them the same increase, approximately same increase of 3% for our substitutes. So we just applied it to the existing rates outlined in the substitute handbook that included the tiered amounts that you have in front of you.
Thank you. I think that was helpful to understand. But I do want to point out that even with this increase, and we say 20%, that number sounds big, but it's a 20% of a really small number. So it's really not that startling. And then to sober that up, then you look at the comps from the surrounding peer districts, or some of them, those that are easily drivable if you had a choice to sub here or elsewhere. And even with this raise, that's proposed, it's still quite low. So I'm not opposed to the proposal this evening. My concern is that it's too piecemeal and it's too much of a small baby step, and that we have a bigger review that I believe could be both beneficial not just to the district, but also reducing the overhead to administer the sub pay and more beneficial to the subs. If we took a little bit bigger view of this and not tried to play kind of catch up. And I've shared my concerns with you about this approach. So I'll just leave it at that. You don't have to comment, but I would hope that we're all on the same page, that there's some work to do here, and staying with this status quo structure without any data suggesting that retention is an incentive with this structure. I'm left a little flummoxed as to why we continue with a pretty administratively burdensome structure to implement when it may not be achieving the goal.
President Sanowski, Vice President Hartwells, if I may, we agree that there's a deeper dive. When talking with Ms. Crozier about the financial implications to the budget doing this at this time of year, the overall cost was around $190,000, which was taking, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Crozier, taking last year's amount that were paid to subs and then applying the increase on top of that. So doing something substantially more, which I don't think any of us disagree, might be necessary, would have a much larger implication at this time of year. But as we discussed, certainly is worth a review, and all of those points about the tiered ranges as well.
And I appreciate that. I just want to kind of add some context to that, is that assessment was done with the status quo. And what I'm referring to is taking a whole new approach to this, so that that wouldn't be the number that you'd be expecting to see in a projected budget or a projected expenditure if you just looked at this entirely differently and more simplified.
Agreed.
And more competitive. So I'll leave it at that, but I think you get my point in that I'm not opposed to the proposal. I just wanted to point out that I think that there is perhaps a few degrees of the perspective, if we were to move it just a few degrees and take a look at this from a different perspective, that there might be some actual real benefits, actual and indirect cost benefits for a different approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing those points forward. I see blue lights flashing here, so I'll save my comments to the end. Board Member Beckman?
Okay, thank you. So thanks for putting this together and bringing it forward. I think our subs are underpaid, and we need them, frankly. So, but my concern lies in the tiered approach, the total number of days subbed. I had a sub come to me recently and ask me, I was unaware, that it resets, that they hit the 90 and then they have to do the whole thing over again next year. And I understand from our perspective, we may look at that as incentivizing them to stay and sub in SUSD, but when they can go to a peer district and not have that at all, I think it may be doing just the opposite. So I would question why we have this at all, to be honest with you. So if we could succinctly here take a look at why, maybe to say what you're saying, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by having this in general. I would like to see this without this tiered schedule, so.
Thank you, Board Member Beckman. Board Member Lindsay?
Just to put it a different way, I was just comparing us with some other districts, so I was able to get 12 other districts that are surrounding, and our daily rate at 124 puts us at 12th out of the 13. And even on day 90, we're 5th or 6th out of the 13 total districts. So I agree that we should probably scrap the tiered system.
So could we move to amend this tonight and still vote on it, or would you like to look at a deeper proposal?
Well, that was where I was headed with my questions, but because of the financial impact hadn't been kind of fully galvanized.
I do believe because, and council, please
I'm looking
correct
at-
me on this.
Yeah,
looking
we
at
can.
Because this is to seek
McLennan.
approval on this, we would have to vote it down and start fresh for a future item.
Okay.
Okay, council says that would be the, correct. All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
But we don't think we want to vote it
We
down.
could
Table it.
table it.
Yeah, I think we're all on board. Or we can, I'm sorry
No,
to
go ahead.
interrupt, or because we do have subs who are, they are the ones that brought this forward to HR, some, right? And we appreciate that feedback, is approve and then ask for a revision after some analysis in a reasonable period of time, maybe in the next quarter, by the end of next quarter, before we start budget planning for the next school year. And that would be a new action item that would just amend the existing. How about a reaction to that?
I think that's a good approach. My concern is we just talked about the burden on our payroll
Well,
department.
that's true.
If we're going to approve, discuss approving this and then coming back, and then, are we going to be making them do more work down the road?
President Snowski, Human Resources works in conjunction with payroll, so we give the data to them through a PAR that says we need to pay these people this amount. So it's both ends that
Okay,
have to do that, so,
So the payment would be a payment anyway,
correct.
if they're subbing for us. Okay, I appreciate that, knowing that. I'm going to be bold here and ask that we consider approving this tonight, just so that the substitutes currently in our district, even though it's a really small increase, it's an increase.
I would, can I say something here? I would love to have a date by which we set to
Sure.
re-put this on this meeting. I'd like to see it this year, if that's possible.
Can I suggest we can bring back a recommendation
Please.
for that before the end of the calendar year?
Right.
I like the idea of, we could start with a revised schedule in second semester. Gives us time to actually run the financials, know exactly what we're looking at, and bring back that plan that addresses this concern with the tiered structure.
And might I suggest that we look carefully at, if our strategic plan says we want to attract and retain the best, that we are going to be looking at offering the best compensation for our substitutes. Because teachers have all sorts of opportunities to mentor, be involved in professional development outside of their classroom, but often they don't, because it is tough to secure a sub. It's tough to secure a sub that knows how to be a substitute teacher and the teacher of record for that day. So we want the best, and we want those coming back and, throwing crumbs at the substitutes who are committed to our district and requiring them to start fresh on that pay scale just doesn't make sense to me as retaining the best. So I would like for us to put that in, if we're going to approve something tonight, also put in place maybe on the future agenda items that we set a firm date by the end of first semester that something has been presented to the board, that it establishes a change of practice and compensation for our substitutes. Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells.
Yes, thank you, President Snowski, and I think that proposal is reasonable in light of kind of a little bit of a change here. But I want to Ms. Wilson's credit, thank you for bringing forward the proposal, one, and kind of writing a maybe inadvertent wrong, so to speak, but also just in your defense, when I was a sub several years ago, this tiered structure was in place at that time. So this was not something that was a current structure, but it's something that's been around, and I think it's gotten a little dusty and out of date for certain, and appreciate everybody on the board seeing that very quickly and appreciating that that's not where we're at anymore as a district. So thank you again, Ms. Wilson.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice President. President Dr. Hartwells. Board Member Beckman?
Oh, I'm
Oh, you're just flashing away over here. Any other comments or questions for Ms. Wilson? Okay, thank you, Ms. Wilson. So at this time, I am going to ask for a motion to approve the 2022-23 substitute pay increase as presented here this evening.
So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 4-0. Good. It's good to get the additional funds in the. Board Member Beckman, can you look to, they won't, okay. Just like flag me down if you want to say something. All right, no problem. All right, we're going to move on to, at this point, we have approved that, we're good to go. We're going to move on to our action items 9. We have a presentation, or we're going to be taking action on the authorization of expenditure Kiva Elementary School Professional Design Services Addendum to Scope of Services Agreement with Orcutt Wilson. As you recall, Board, this was something that we tabled last board meeting. Dennis. Hi.
Hi. Good evening, President Sanowski, Vice President Libby Hartwells, board members. I have no presentation,
Okay.
only at the mercy of your questions. I sent that
Yeah.
board memo. I'm sorry I was out Tuesday 2 weeks ago. I thought that Dr. Menzel did a pretty good job of answering the question, but I'm here to help however I can.
And I think we all felt like it was probably okay to just get some clarifying questions directly from you. So board members, do you have questions? Is that a yes?
It's for
Board Member
real.
Beckman.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. I remember specifically the reason I had wanted to table this is I wanted to hear from you that the adjustment in the fees was you were absolute and why. And because there was a little bit of guesswork that was surrounding the answer during the meeting, and when we're voting on the dollars, we need you to be pretty firm in your response with regard to the contractual language with this. So if you could just kind of, I don't know, you can do this off the top of your head, just
Yep.
go over for the community what specific concern we had in that and the reduction in fees and why it was there.
Okay, so the Kiva design project, the visioning process, was all done online. That was in the heart of COVID. That made it a little bit challenging. We had the transition from Dr. Kriekard to Dr. Menzel. There were a lot of transitions that were happening. CGP at Kiva, CGP director in the district, a lot of different things that affected the design. Orcutt Winslow had to go back. I actually stopped the progress of the design because we had gotten so big on that campus, over 80,000 square feet, and their current enrollment was below 500. So I really didn't see us building such a large school for that campus at that time. So we put a pause. Dr. Menzel got his feet wet. I think that was one of the very first conversations that I had with him, that we needed to try and resolve this design issue. So Orcutt Winslow did a lot of work behind the scenes trying to clean that up, and we finally got to a point that we could go back to the visioning committee, talk about that, got it to the point that we were ready to then move forward. So a lot of time and energy on their part, and contractually they could just say, hey, the cost of construction is X and our agreed upon fee is Y, and that's what we need to get paid. They kept track of all of their redesign numbers, and it was in excess of $90,000. In my memo to you, I was very kind and said that they did it as a partner. I had to twist their arm a little bit. But the bottom line was we were looking at the impacts of COVID the costs that were associated with building a school, and they came back to the table with, hey, we're going to do this reduced fee, we're going to not charge you those redesign numbers, and ultimately, we're only going to ask for $89,000 instead of the $239,000 that contractually they could have asked for. So they did come to the table and reduce their fee, much like SPS Plus did. They looked at the inflation and everything that we were dealing with, and they reduced their fee as well. So it was, I know that theirs, my explanation on theirs was a little bit more complicated, but I did want to give them credit for the fees that they did reduce.
So as a sidebar, since you're at the podium and we are talking about Kiva, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, I think the community would be a little bit upset if I didn't ask you where we are on the full rebuild. Are we there? I mean, we're approving money tonight. So what is going on with the school? How close are we to done, the air conditioning, et cetera, in your opinion?
So we are fully open. The playground, the parking lot, everything is fully open. We actually even finished the new asphalt in the church parking lot as part of our joint use agreement. So from that perspective, we are substantially complete. We are using the entire facility. We have a lot of bugs that we're working on right now. Some of the high energy saving, the energy efficient equipment that we've got on there is very difficult to manage in our energy management program. And I'll say this. When the bell sounds, we give everybody 40 minutes, 45 minutes of air conditioning beyond the last bell. Air conditioning goes off. On Friday night, air conditioning goes off, doesn't come back on until Monday morning. With these super efficient units, we're not getting the dehumidification that we would love to get. So we're having to make some hard decisions on that campus as to whether or not we're going to close outside air, which I had promised 2 years ago with COVID that we wouldn't be doing that. We would keep it open and make sure we're getting fresh air on the campus, or we have to run the units much longer, which takes away our energy efficiency altogether. So we're weighing those options, trying to get that figured out. Fortunately, the weather's changing, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop with those efforts. But otherwise, there was a list, punch list that was about 1,600 items long, and McCarthy's now down to just a couple hundred left, and we're working through it. It was a late project. It came in late. It was a very difficult move-in. It was a very difficult project. I would say the hardest that I ever had to deal with. We're working through it. McCarthy is trying to be a good partner, and I think we'll get there, but we're not getting there as fast as everyone would like.
Okay, if you can keep the board or myself or whomever else is interested in the updates with regard to the air conditioning, just because it's a little bit frustrating that we spent so much money. I mean, obviously engineers look at that type of thing and why have a brand new plan there and it's not working efficiently. So if you can keep me and whoever else would like to be apprised of any progress we make on that front, I'd appreciate it, because it is my home school and I am hearing a little bit about it.
Yes.
So thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you, Board Member Beckman. Any other questions for Dennis? Nope. Seeing none? Okay. I would like to make a motion to approve the authorization of expenditure Kiva Elementary School Professional Design Services Addendum to Scope of Services Agreement with Orcutt Winslow. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved, passes 4-0. Thank you for helping with that. All right. Early night for all of you because the governing board has the authority to, according to ARS 38-43103A1, for the purpose of conducting this, going into executive session for conducting the superintendent's quarterly performance evaluation and I would like to make a motion for us to move into executive session at this time. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 That motion passes 4-0. We are going to stay here for our executive session, so ask that you all go home and enjoy your evenings. And there will be no action after this evening, so you won't miss out on anything.
Well, they could hear our future items.
Okay. Yes. At this time, I call for a motion to adjourn executive session.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to adjourn executive session, say aye.
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 That motion passes 4-0. And we will reconvene our regular governing board meeting at 8:58 PM. And I ask, let's see, coming up next, we have future items. Do any governing board members have any items they'd like to request for future consideration? Vice President Dr. Hurwells?
Yes, thank you. 3 items, one of which I think has already been stated, but I want to formally request it, and that is a request for revision of the subpay, to specifically remove the tiered structure. Also, a different item, I would like at the appropriate time, when there's enough substance to provide to the board, a presentation on the pilot of the next gen teaching pilots that are taking place on the district, including costs. And then the third is and this can be in the form of a memo, at least I'm okay with that, to the board as a follow-up on the CGP forum at Hopi that is our public comment parent had mentioned is taking place, along with recommendations as a result of that conversation of next steps. In other words, I'm assuming that will not be a one and done forum. Thank you.
Any others? I have a few requests. I noted in our personnel action request items this evening that there were many teachers that were placed on a 1.2 or 6/5 contract. My concern is that this is unhealthy practice to support our strategic plans, goals 1, 2, and 3. This potentially leads to teacher burnout. It challenges communication as well as the work in professional learning communities. So I would like to learn, I'd like for the board to learn what we are doing to recruit, train, or support from within Scottsdale to fill our staff vacancies. Also, I'd like to know what the status, and this could be also in a memo, what the status update is to include certified personnel in the doctorate stipend, which has been brought up multiple times in the past, how many it impacts and why we're not doing it yet. And then I believe Board Member Lindsay had mentioned this before about compensation, benefits analysis across employee groups, but also to compare our rates of pay to Valley schools, comparable district, charter, and private schools. We talk about recruiting and retaining the best, and I think we need to stay ahead of compensation and benefits packages, as was evident through the sub-pay issue that was brought up tonight. So that would be an additional item. I know that's a lot, but I feel like those are important. If there are no others, we will move on to dates of upcoming meetings. Next meeting is Tuesday, November 1st at 6 p.m. and that special meeting will be at the MDA. Tuesday, November 15th at 6 p.m. we will meet back here at Coronado High School. And at this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this regular governing board meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 4-0. This meeting is adjourned at 9:01 PM.